wrote your legal opinion stating that all of these techniques, the techniques that we've referenced, all of 1, all of 2, and some of 3, were legal under the federal law. You attended a meeting that's been discussed here where there was a strategy meeting on counter-resistance, Lieutenant Colonel Beaver, and there were a number of people at that meeting, including the CIA lawyer and the Chief of Interrogation Control, Mr. Dave Becker. Do you remember that meeting?
These meetings were mine. I started them in, I think it was late August, when I became aware that the military intelligence personnel were considering requesting additional techniques. So I thought it best if I held the meetings, brainstorming sessions, for lack of a better way to describe it, and invited everyone, including the law enforcement agencies, that there would be a more open discussion as opposed to just the military intelligence people. And so that was a regularly scheduled meeting that Mr. Fredman, who just happened to come down to the island that day, was there for. So it wasn't held for him. It was a meeting that I scheduled those meetings and invited everyone.
And so the CIA lawyer was just invited in for that meeting that was already planned?
Yes.
Okay.
That's how I recall it.
Okay. And I want to go through some of the notes about this meeting. And I know that you didn't write these notes. I just need to know whether you think that this recollection of what was said is flat wrong and just absolutely not true. It's important to know whether you deny that these things were said in front of you or that you said these things. The first thing is attributed to you. We need to curb the harsher operations when the Red Cross is around. It's better not to expose them to any controversial techniques. We must have support of the DOD.
Mr. Pryor, I think when you were absent, asked a similar question, and what I can say is I do not recall, of course, 6 years later, anything that I actually said in that meeting. What I do, because I was a liaison to the ICRC, and I have great respect for what they do, what I believe that I think I would have said is that when you are conducting an interrogation, if the ICRC is on the island and they want to see a particular detainee, you can't disrupt the interrogation for that purpose. And so that automatically, if you want to say, can cause some controversy.
Well, that's not what this says. It says you need to curb.
I didn't write it. All I can say is, ma'am, I don't know what actually happened or what was actually said. I'm just saying I don't think I would have said something in that manner because I worked with the ICRC very closely and we had an excellent relationship, and I have great respect for what they do, but they came in 6-week cycles. They went be there for 6 weeks and then gone for 6 weeks. And so I don't know. All I can guess is I might have been referring to when they're not there, you would be doing your more aggressive interrogation, because then there wouldn't be any problems. And then when they come back, if they wanted to see that particular detainee, they were allowed to see the detainee. They had access to all the detainees.
Well, why would there be a problem of them ever seeing the detainee?
Well, when you're conducting an interrogation, you can't disrupt it for just the purpose of an ICRC visit.
Whether it's harsh or not?
Correct.
Well, then why would you delineate harsh in your statement just now? Why would it make a difference whether it was harsh?
Well, I'm just using it in context of this conversation. But, yes, there were many times when detainees were undergoing, like they had just arrived on the island and the ICRC was told they would not have access to them for 2 weeks while we processed them. Right. So there were many engagements like that where we explained why they could or could not see a detainee.
The notes, I want to make sure the record's clear who wrote these notes. These notes were written by the Criminal Investigation Task Force.
That's correct, ma'am.
Of DOD.
Yes, they're an executive agent of the Secretary of the Army. Okay,
so these are criminal investigators that are used to contemporaneously taking notes and making sure that they're reliable because they must rely on them in a criminal investigation.
All I'm saying is I didn't write them, and 6 years later I cannot recall what I said in a meeting.
Part of their professional training, in fact, is the ability to take notes contemporaneously with an event so they can recall later, for purposes of the investigation, what happened. Is that correct?
I don't.
The CIA is not held to the same rules as the military. In the past, when the International Red Cross has made a big deal about certain detainees, the DOD has, quote, moved them away from the attention of the International Red Cross. Upon questioning from the International Red Cross about their whereabouts, the DOD's response has repeatedly been that the detainees merited no status under the Geneva Convention. The CIA has employed aggressive techniques on less than a handful of suspects since 9/11. Do you recall those words being said by the lawyer from the CIA, that there was a habit of moving these detainees if the International Red Cross started asking questions?
Again, I would say I don't recall with any kind of specificity what was said at that meeting. I know how we handled these issues, and in fact, Katani, which the law enforcement folks had custody of him at the brig before JTF 170 did, and the FBI and the CITF agents did not allow the ICRC to speak to him. He was seen through, the ICRC was allowed, if they wished, to go in and see him in the brig, that he was alive and well. And that was in the July-August time frame. So this was one of the detainees, this particular gentleman, ISN 63, that had been of interest to the law enforcement community as well as the intelligence community, and there had been many discussions. So again, I can't attribute anything to what Mr. Fredman said about the CIA, but I knew that DOD had different rules regarding the ICRC and how we operated on a DOD installation.